Hey, welcome to the Texas Values Report. This is Jonathan Saenz, president of Texas Values. Hope you're having a great week. It's a glorious week in the state of Texas. It's always a glorious week if you live in Texas. Hey, that's my opinion. Hey, we got a lot to talk about today. Busy couple of weeks for some of us. I don't know about you. We're going to recap the election results, and we're going to recap the Republican Party of Texas State Convention. All of those events happened in the past 2 weeks, week and a half. And I'm real excited because I'm going to the dentist today. That's my attempt at humor, okay? Anyway, so first week of summer, sort of. I had a son graduate from high school last week and a daughter who graduated from 8th grade. You know, that's what we do now. Big ceremonies for getting out of middle school. You know, accomplishment, sure. College graduations a couple of weeks ago. So maybe you're just catching your breath. Maybe you're relaxing this week because you're like, great. Summer started, the kids are home, I got a little bit more flexibility. I don't know what your status is, but I'm not in that category completely, okay? I do have kids, they're home, and there's a little bit more free time, but our work does not stop because we sort of go from one, adventure to the next. You're going to hear more about that next week, something we're working on today that is a big deal, and we'll give you more details about something that we're going to be filing that you're going to want to know about. But June's a big month. We're not quite in June. We're almost at the end of May. June is a big month because it's the end of our fiscal year. So you're going to get irritated with me at some point this month because it's going to be like a broken record. Please donate to Texas Values. And I'm not ashamed to do that, though, okay? Because, look, we're a nonprofit organization. If I'm not sold out about how important it is to donate to our group and how valuable we are and how important it is for us to continue to have people donating to us so we can do the work we do at a high level, why would you believe in that or what we do? So stay tuned for that, but you don't have to wait until June. You could donate today at txvalues.org. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. If you want to continue to see us do the work that we do, and we did bring someone new on. She was supposed to start officially June 1st, but she was so eager to start with us. She started this week. Megan Benton, recent graduate of the University of Texas. She's been doing work with us for the past year in a variety of different ways. Now she is full-time part of the team. Super excited about that. But the big news, I'll sort of go backwards, in time, if you will, as far as the most recent. The big news right now this week sort of is the election results in the state of Texas. And what we're talking about is the primary runoff election results, right? We had an election in March. If you're not aware of what I'm talking about, you're probably not in the minority because sadly, in counties like Tarrant County and others, turnout was like 5 to 6%. Let that sink in. Okay, 5 to 6% of the people in the area you live, if you didn't vote, they decided for you who was going to the Capitol. And I am a little irritated. I mean, I have to admit. And is that some reflection on us? Partly, right? Part of our work is telling people about an election, trying to get voter turnout, right? And I understand in North Texas, some areas there was some bad weather on election day, but there was a week of early voting. Now, who was in charge of, scheduling the Republican Party of Texas Convention the week of early voting? I don't know. I'm not trying to be overly critical. I'm just saying I know that had some impact. You have to assume. Nonetheless, it is striking that turnout was so incredibly low. Now, I wasn't entirely surprised because there's sort of a trend of that, but I want people to appreciate that. So if the candidate that you woke up the next morning and found out didn't win, and you're like, oh, actually, I like that candidate, or why is Dade Phelan win his reelection and David Covey didn't win, and now Dade Phelan may end up staying Speaker of the House, and you were all fired up about that issue because you didn't vote if you lived in that area. I mean, look, and so just keep that in mind. Now, we have a separate organization, Texas Values Action. That entity did endorse in elections and had a pretty good night overall for the primary cycle. About 6 of the 11 candidates at Texas Values Action endorsed one re-election. So I want to talk about a couple of those since it's more recent. So most of the House races took center stage. So that's people like Katrina Pearson, Carissa Richardson, A.J. Lauterbach, and others that were victorious, and many of them were challenging incumbents, right? Katrina Pearson, Carissa Richardson, and others as well. And so important to know that. I'm going to look through my notes here to make sure I remember all of these. Alan Schoolcraft also was a challenger in a Republican primary. He won and knocked off John Kemple. That was a big deal. That guy's been around for a while. Brent Hagenbu wins a Senate seat, and that was an endorsement by Texas Values Action. That was an open seat, not a challenger. One person who was challenged that did win re-election was Tom Maynor, State Board of Education, somebody that Texas Values Action endorsed. You heard me mention, or not mention, you didn't hear me mention in any way that David Covey won or Cheryl Bean won. Those were two races Texas Values Action was very much involved in. A lot of people are watching. I think the biggest race of the night, it's safe to say, though, is the David Covey versus Dade Phelan race. Anyone that challenges the Speaker of the House in the primary is going to get a lot of attention. But that race went to a runoff, right? David Covey got the most votes in March. And disclaimer, his brother does work for us. Jonathan Covey is the older brother of David Covey. Texas Values Action did not get involved in that in endorsing that race in March, but did endorse as it went to the runoff cycle. David Covey was endorsed by Texas Values Action 2 or 3 weeks ago going into this runoff election, and the margin was pretty slim. A little over 300 votes or a little less than 400 votes was the difference in about 25,000 votes in that race. And Speaker Phelan has come under a tremendous amount of attack and scrutiny and criticism. As a matter of fact, a couple of days before the election on this Tuesday, the runoff election, the main election day, Shelby Slauson, this is a Texas House member who was the author of the Texas Heartbeat Act a couple of sessions ago in 2021 as a freshman, but she's got a lot of notoriety on that victory since then too. Put out an article, a blistering article, about Speaker Phelan. As a matter of fact, if we haven't posted that on social media, we need to do that today. I know a lot got missed or sort of was going on in those couple of days leading up to election, but if you didn't see this article, wow. I mean, she pulled the curtain back on the Paxton impeachment issue and basically said it was all Phelan's fault. He made us do it. He put a lot of House Republicans in a tough position, and now they're paying the price for it. Whatever the case may be, you've got to read this article. So, but look, David Covey was endorsed by President Trump, by Paxton, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, but David Covey came out very quickly, and this was talked about beforehand, and this will touch on, my comments about the Republican Party of Texas Convention, is that Democrats, David Covey and his team they claim that over 1,400 registered Democrats voted in that Republican primary runoff election. Now, did they all vote for Phelan? I don't know. I don't know if he got into that detail, but there were a lot of people that believed that Dade Phelan was courting and encouraging Democrats or moderate Republicans to vote for him because he knew he had to find some way to win because amongst Republicans that were expected to vote, he was going to lose, right? This is sort of the claim of, it's not sort of, this is the claim of David Covey, and this is some things that were happening, right? It was widely talked about that, Dade Phelan was having problems with grassroots conservative Republicans, so he might have to go outside of that circle and even outside of the Republican circle in order to win. And so that's what David Covey is saying. 1,400 registered Democrats voted in that runoff election. And, I think he's probably assuming most of them, if not all of them, voted for Dade Phelan. They wouldn't be voting for David Covey because he's such a established or communicated conservative Republican. I'm just, that's the way this sets up. So we'll see. But that's a big part of why not that election, because that our election had not taken place. But there was a lot of concern in that regard because these things have happened before. Democrats bragging about voting in Republican primary elections to get more moderate candidates elected and push back against Christian conservative candidates and people of that nature. So at the Republican Party of Texas Convention last week, delegates overwhelmingly voted in their representatives and committees that the Republican primaries moving forward would be closed. There would be some measures in place that if you're not a registered Republican, you're not voting in that election. It kind of makes sense. Not kind of, it's common sense. That makes sense a lot. I'm going to do something here too before I forget. I'm going to make sure that I share on my social media this live feed. let's see if I can get back to it, of our discussion, because I think a lot of people will be interested in what I have to say and what we're going to talk about. That's a little arrogant of me, sort of, but that's why we do this. We think you're interested in these topics, and so we're going to talk about them. But a couple of other races I mentioned, Cheryl Bean did not win her election. Now, you look at, whose influence mattered or whatever. School choice had a good night. The candidates that won largely supported school choice, except for two, in my opinion. Okay, Dade Phelan, from everything I can see, does not support school choice, or at least he's not a fan of it. He may not be a hard opposition, he may be, or there might not be quite as much evidence to that, but I think there's plenty of evidence that suggests or demonstrate he is not a school choice supporter, right? It would not bother him at all if that legislation fails, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if last session and during the special sessions that Governor Abbott called on the school choice issue, Phelan wasn't doing anything to help that issue, and he likely was doing things to make it harder. Okay, so it is my opinion strongly that Dade Phelan does not support school choice. And if he returns as speaker, school choice will be dead in the House. I don't care about, the fact that Governor Abbott got involved in elections, which largely resulted in incumbents that did not support school choice losing, because school choice has become one of the biggest issues for Governor Abbott, even though that's helped, and on paper the numbers are there, and Abbott was claiming victory, even though he didn't get involved in the David Covey-Dade Phelan election. He did tweet out his congratulations to Dade Phelan. Maybe that's a formality, but he didn't get involved in that race. But because of these other outcomes, where incumbents that were very strong loyalists, many of them to Dade Phelan, and the reason they got challenged because a lot of people didn't like Dade Phelan and they want school choice or whatever, Governor Abbott says, we got the votes now for school choice. Except for the fact that the person who's saying they're coming back as Speaker of the House is not one of those people that support school choice, and he's in a position to hold it all back or some way have some influence above everybody else to make sure it doesn't get done. So I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I do agree that the votes are there and it should get done, but in my experience, just because you have 75 or 76 votes, it's usually not enough, sadly. Because there are other people in power that can influence the process, particularly the Speaker of the House. I saw Joe Strauss do it. Okay, we had the votes to protect privacy. Remember that? The Protect Privacy legislation in 2017 that the left called the bathroom bill because they wanted to use our messaging from defeating that issue in Houston to then turn against us. And it, sort of worked, I guess. But we had the votes in the House, okay? And we passed it. Or we passed some version of it, but Joe Strauss made it clear he wasn't going to let it happen. I was there. He had a press conference of one, just himself, in the Speaker's press room or whatever, the House press room, just him at the podium saying the Protect Privacy Bill, whatever it was being called by some people, is dead. He wasn't going to let it move, okay? So keep that in mind, and that's relevant. Why? Because just because Dade Phelan won in his runoff election against David Covey does not mean that he returns as Speaker of the House. Okay, so many of y'all might be really up on this, and you're like, we know that, Jonathan. Why are you telling us that? Come on, everybody knows that. Don't assume that. There are a lot of people I talk to that are like, man, now Dade Phelan's going to be Speaker again. No. Now, he wants you to believe that it's already sort of resolved and done, but it's not. There's a vote. There's two parts, and this is coming out in an article we're sending out in an email today, wrapping up the convention and the election. For Texas House Republicans, there are two steps to electing the Speaker of the House. Number one, a rule that Republican Party of Texas grassroots delegates voted on and demanded was that the House Republican caucus has to meet privately, and they have to vote on one person. And that one House Republican is their representative to be Speaker, and House Republicans have to vote for that person on the floor. Now, you might not like that because you're like, what if we want a better person? But the reason it was set up that way is so Republicans couldn't go later and go, well, I'm going to not vote for him, and then that Republican candidate groups up with the Democrats. It's specifically designed to keep Democrats from having an influence in the outcome of the Speaker's race when Republicans have a majority in the House. So if there are at least 76 Republicans, that should be enough that the Republicans decide who's going to be Speaker. If they all come together and vote for that same person, which they're required to do by rule, okay? That's one step. The next step is when they go to the floor, those Republicans are required to vote for the candidate that was selected in the caucus. You with me? It's coming out in an article. You want to read it online when it comes out if you get our email. If you don't get our email, you're watching this, you need to get our email, okay? So sign up if you're watching this broadcast at txvalues.org. We cover this topic. What does that mean? That means that other people are probably going to declare, or if someone else declares to become Speaker of the House, there'll be two people running against each other. There'll be a choice. As a matter of fact, someone's already done that. Tom Oliverson announced in March, right after the first round of primary elections, that he was running for Speaker of the House. Whether Phelan came back and survived his challenge in the primary or not, he was running for Speaker of the House, and he was going to do things differently than Dade Phelan. Number one, he made a public commitment. There will be no Democrat chairs of committees if Tom Oliverson is Speaker. Now, at this point, is anybody else going to get in? I doubt it. It's possible, but at this point, now that Phelan won, there are probably a lot of House Republicans who are like, oh, maybe I shouldn't get involved. But they're a choice, Tom Oliverson or Dade Phelan. Now, I think it's very clear. There's no doubt Oliverson is the better choice. It's my personal opinion. You know, we haven't stated that as an organization, if you will, but if it's just the two of them, there's no question that Oliverson is the better candidate. So, all right. So I'm going to have to do a special segment, obviously, just on this topic, because I'm going to run out of time and I haven't really talked a lot about the convention. When our email comes out later this afternoon, check it out. You got more questions about it, let me know, and we can go from there. But the reason I brought this up is this is the big issue right now. Between now and November and really January, who is going to be the Texas House Speaker? Because all of these other accomplishments that people think that they gained by getting new House Republicans to replace some of these people that voted for impeachment of Paxton and, you know, didn't support school choice, all of those gains could be lost, in my opinion, if Dade Phelan returns as Speaker of the House. And I'm not the only one that thinks this or that thinks that Dade Phelan needs to not be Speaker of the House. Lieutenant Governor Patrick was very quick to talk about this on social media Tuesday night when the election results came back and Dade Phelan survived his challenge, right? Walking around with a cigar like he had won the Super Bowl. I mean, the guy barely survived. Anyway, that's for another show. Okay. Ken Paxton was quick to put on social media that Dade Phelan, just because he survived his House seat, does not mean he should be Speaker. The fact that he just barely won is evidence that, you know, a lot of people have lost faith in him. And, of course, Tom Oliverson said something very similar in his statement that night. So that's going to be the big issue moving forward because of the reasons I stated in my opinion. Let's go back to the state convention. Okay, why is Texas Values there, or Texas Values Action, both of us? You might ask yourself, we're not a Republican organization. This is a Republican event. There are a lot of events that we go to that are specifically designed for some particular entity. But typically, those entities have some influence on the cultural issues, the legal issues, the policy issues that we care about as Christians here at Texas Values. Many of them can have a strong legal and policy nature to them, and so our influence, our expertise, our involvement can matter a lot. And somebody is, even in Republican circles, is usually trying to move things in the wrong direction. Okay, take it more liberal, take it more moderate, take it less Christian, you name it. And that always happens at the State Republican Party of Texas Convention every 2 years. That's why we were there. We're one of the few groups. As a matter of fact, I think we're the only faith and family statewide group that had somebody there every day of the convention, particularly those first 3 days when a lot of those committees are meeting on what's going to be in the platform, what are the priority items going to be going to next session. So we had some ups and downs on that, but at the end of the day, we got all that stuff handled, and we're moving forward in a very strong way. Some strong platform language in there on our issues that stayed, some new stuff, some things that got shored up, and also including in the list of legislative priorities, 15. I think it gets whittled down to 8 based on what delegates decide at the end of that convention last week. And so stop sexualizing children, issues related to pro-life, issues related to educational freedom. Stop gambling. This is one of the big deals. The candidate that defeated Cheryl Bean in this open seat, John McQueenie, supports casino gambling. Okay, this is a growing concern. We cannot have this in Texas, all right? But I think one of the bigger stories coming out of the Republican convention, and maybe I'm yelling. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm loud because I don't have a guest. It's just me, so I think I don't have my earphones on. So anyway, I apologize if it sounds like I'm screaming. And I do have 3 kids. I naturally just have a louder, more expressive voice. Okay, that's just reality. So I think one of the bigger stories was who was going to be the chair of the Republican Party of Texas. Remember, Matt Rinaldi said he wasn't running again. There were like 5 people. Then Matt Makoviak jumped in towards the end. Now there were 6 people running for chair. Abby Johnson jumped in as vice chair. It was kind of fun. We had a private breakfast. A lot of them came last week at the RPT Convention. It was, a lot of people I know. Abraham George ends up winning, and so does Dorinda Randall as vice chair. I think a lot of people think they were the front runners coming in because I think Rinaldi supported them and some other people sort of in his circle. But it wasn't quite so certain that was going to be the case. So some spirited competition, okay? And that's who ended up. But I don't think, I'll check my sources, I don't think Abraham George is a big fan of Dade Phelan, nor was Matt Rinaldi. So that could play into this equation. You better believe it, right? Of who ends up becoming the Texas Speaker of the House, right? And it's not as if members don't have some, say on what happens in their house just because the speaker says he or she does or does not want something, but it can matter a lot, okay? And so, but I also think it sent a message for other House members. If you come out and vote one way or another for Dade Phelan, I think you're got to expect you're probably going to get a primary challenge next time around. We'll see. Okay, a lot to unpack there. I think we're about to run out of time. We've got a big event. We're going to talk about these issues. Speaking of, Tom Oliverson's going to be one of our big featured speakers at the Faith, Family, and Freedom Forum, September 13th and 14th. I know you're like, that's kind of far away, but everybody tells us every year, y'all need to put stuff on the calendar earlier. We need to have more advance notice. Great. We've been telling you for 4 months about this event, and it's 3 months away, September 13th and 14th in Austin at Great Hills Baptist Church. It's a 2-day event, educational event. We're going to have 25 to 30 speakers. It is the largest event of its type in the state of Texas. This is the 7th year we're going to do it. You don't want to miss this event, okay? We're going to get a lot of attention there, no doubt, with Tom Oliverson and others. Macy Petty, NCAA athlete, is going to be there. One of the former board members of the NCAA who resigned because of the Save Women's Sports issue was going the wrong direction by the NCAA. He's going to be there. We got a whistleblower, a guy who said on our show that he thinks Texas Children's Hospital is still doing, or was at the time, gender transition surgeries on kids or something similar to that, even after state law says you can't do it, all right? A lot of great speakers there. Ellen Troxclair. Who else did we announce recently? Melissa Oden. I'm forgetting someone. Maybe it was Macy Petty that we got confirmation from recently. Go to our website, txvalues.org. Steve Toe, Sid Miller, all right, statewide elected official. It's going to be fun, September 13th and 14th. So if your group wants to be a sponsor, there's an opportunity for that, or you want to host a table, a booth, all that good stuff, that is up to our discretion, but submit your application. We'll decide if we think you're a good fit for this event. Listen, I'm out of time, but we're going to have a matching grant coming up soon. Our fiscal year ends in the end of June, okay? So please make that tax-deductible donation today at txvalues.org. And that's how together we can protect faith, family, and freedom in the state of Texas. And we'll talk to you next week on the Texas Values Report.